I'm Oliver, and what you're about to hear is a glimpse beyond the veil of this world. For years, I've listened to those who died and came back transformed. I share their voices so far, exactly as they told them. These are not fantasies. They are lived truths, encounters with something greater, divine, terrifying, or both. Prepare your soul, because once you've seen what lies beyond death, life is never the same.
If you're ready to walk this journey with me, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. You won't want to miss what comes next.
There are moments in life when everything you thought was true begins to crumble. Not because you were looking for it, not because you were rebellious, but because someone, breaks through your certainty with undeniable light. My name is Layla. I was born and raised in a devout Muslim family, taught to fear, to obey, and to never question. But what I'm about to share with you changed the course of my existence, cost me nearly everything, and gave me more than I ever imagined. This is not a story about religion. It's a story about truth, about a love I never knew existed, and about a savior I thought I'd never meet. If you're watching this, maybe it's not by accident. Maybe, just maybe, your heart is ready for something real. I was born into tradition. Deep, immovable, unquestioned tradition. My parents raised me to believe that Islam was not just our religion, it was our identity, our duty, our destiny. From the earliest memories I have, I was surrounded by prayers, rules, recitations, and the ever-present fear of dishonoring God. I didn't learn the words before I learned their weight. I wore my hijab not as a fashion, but as a symbol of devotion. I walked the straight line, never looking to the left or the right. My father was strict but loving in his own way. My mother was soft-spoken but unwavering in her beliefs. We didn't talk about choice. We talked about obedience. Every morning I'd wake to the call to prayer echoing through the narrow streets. I'd wash, cover, kneel. My forehead would touch the ground and I'd whisper the words I'd memorized long before I understood them. We didn't question. We didn't explore. We obeyed. The mosque was not just a place of worship. It was the core of our community. Every neighbor, every family member, every friend followed the same script. To break from it would be to betray not only God, but the very essence of who we were. I grew up in Jordan, a place full of beauty, culture, and ancient faith. But for all its warmth, it held me in a kind of invisible prison. Every smile was measured. Every act was watched. Every doubt had to be buried deep inside. I had questions, but I learned quickly that asking them out loud was dangerous. So I kept them to myself. I smiled. I obeyed. I learned to survive within a belief system that allowed no space for error. My world was tightly controlled, my thoughts carefully guarded. As a teenager, I became more devout, not because I had found peace, but because I was terrified of the alternative. I fasted with zeal. I prayed with precision. I corrected others when they strayed. Outwardly, I was the model of Islamic virtue, but inside, I felt like a stranger to my own soul. There was a silent war between the girl I was expected to be and the woman I was becoming. Still, I told myself this was the price of holiness. This was the cost of faith. My education was focused on religious instruction and social roles. I was never told to dream. I was told to marry well, to serve my family, to honor my God. Love was not a conversation. Freedom was not a goal. The idea of knowing God personally was foreign. He was distant, watching, weighing my every move. I never once felt he was near. I feared him. I tried to earn his approval through good works, but that approval always seemed just out of reach. When I married Amir, a respected Islamic scholar, it was considered a blessing. Everyone said I had done well. He was wise, devout, and passionate about his faith. I tried my best to be the wife he expected. I studied more. I taught our children. I cooked. I served. I submitted. I wanted so badly to feel what everyone else seemed to feel. But instead of peace, I felt pressure. Instead of love, I felt duty. And the questions I had buried as a child began to rise again. Why, I wondered, did obedience feel like chains instead of wings? Why did I feel so far from the God I was taught to fear and follow? Why did kindness and truth seem so rare, even in the places of prayer? I didn't dare speak these thoughts. but they lived inside me like a quiet storm, waiting for a crack in the sky. And one day, that storm finally broke. I continued living as though everything was fine. I smiled at the right moments. I nodded during sermons. I taught my children to memorize the same verses I had learned as a child, all while feeling like I was slowly disappearing. My soul ached for something I couldn't name. I would sit in the quiet of the night after everyone had gone to sleep and wonder why peace seemed like a story meant for someone else. I cried quietly, not because I lacked anything physical, but because I felt like I was drowning under the weight of expectations. I wasn't looking to abandon my faith. I was desperate to make it real. I didn't want to rebel. I wanted to breathe. But every time I took a breath, guilt followed. Amir began to notice something was off. He asked if I was tired, if something was bothering me, but I couldn't bring myself to say the truth. What would I even say? That after all these years of prayer and service, I still felt alone? That when I knelt in worship, I felt more silence than presence? That the God I was told to obey felt impossibly distant? These words were forbidden even in my own mind. So I told him I was fine. I told him I just needed more rest. But deep down, I was unraveling. Not because I hated God, but because I couldn't find him. Not truly. It was at the hospital where I worked part-time as a cleaner that everything began to shift. I started to meet people, kind people, joyful people, who weren't Muslim. At first I kept my distance, certain that their kindness was superficial or misguided. But over time I saw something in them I couldn't ignore. There was a light in their eyes, a peace in their presence that I didn't understand. They weren't preaching. They weren't trying to convert me. But just being around them made me wonder, what did they have that I didn't? I remember one woman in particular, Margaret. She was in her 60s, a nurse, and every time I walked past her, she smiled as if she genuinely saw me. She didn't look through me. She didn't judge me. She greeted me by name, asked how I was doing, and meant it. One day she stayed late after her shift and sat with a patient, long after the others had gone. I watched from a distance as she prayed silently over that man. I could see the love in her eyes, the hope in her words, and it shook me. Not because she was Christian, but because she had something real, and I didn't. That night I went home and sat in my room in the dark. I whispered to the ceiling, to the God I thought I knew, and asked, why don't I have that peace? Why do I feel so empty when others are so full? There was no answer, just silence. But the question itself was a spark. It was the first time I had dared to ask out loud what I had buried for years. And even though it scared me, something inside me knew I couldn't go back to pretending. I had seen a crack in the wall, and now light was pouring through. The dream started soon after. Vivid, intense, unforgettable. I saw fire, shadows, chains. I heard voices calling my name, some comforting, others terrifying. I would wake up sweating, trembling, heart racing. Amir grew more concerned. He told me to increase my prayers, to fast more, to recite more surahs. I obeyed. I tried. But the dreams only intensified. And then one night, I saw a man in white, standing in the middle of the fire, untouched. He called my name, Layla. He didn't shout. He didn't demand. He simply called. And I felt seen for the first time. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? I didn't even believe myself. But the image haunted me. Not like a ghost, but like a memory waiting to surface. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't ignore it. The man in white, the voice in the fire, the calm in the chaos. Something was happening. Something was changing. And for the first time in my life, I wanted to follow it, wherever it led, even if it cost me everything, even if it meant walking alone. A few weeks later, it happened. The accident. It was raining hard, and I was running late from work. The streets were slick, the wind sharp. I was halfway across the road when I heard the screech of tires. The impact came before I could think. And then, nothing. No pain, no noise, just silence. Then floating. I could see my body below, broken, lifeless. I could hear people screaming, see the paramedics rushing. But I wasn't there anymore. I was somewhere else, somewhere dark, somewhere terrifying. And in that place, everything changed. I began to fall, slowly at first, then faster. The darkness wasn't just the absence of light, thick, heavy, and then came the heat. The screams, the despair. I was surrounded by torment, by souls writhing in agony. I tried to speak, tried to cry, but no sound came out. I wasn't in a nightmare. I was in hell, not a metaphor, not a symbol, a real place. And I wasn't alone. I saw people, faces I recognized. One in particular froze my soul, my former Imam, a man revered by thousands. He looked at me, eyes full of sorrow, and said, "We were wrong. Jesus is the truth." My mind rejected it. How could this be? He had taught me everything. He had led prayers, memorized the Quran, lived a life of devotion. But here he was, begging, burning, weeping. He looked at me again and cried, "Go back, tell them, save them." And then he was gone, swallowed by flames. I screamed. I begged. I called out to the God I had always feared. But there was no answer, only darkness. Until suddenly, there was light. It wasn't like any light I had ever seen. It was pure. It was powerful. It pushed back the shadows without effort. And then he appeared, the same man from my dream, dressed in white, eyes full of compassion. "Layla," he said again. And with those words, the fear melted. I fell to my knees, sobbing. He didn't need to tell me who he was. I knew. This was Jesus. Not just a prophet, not a myth, not a symbol. The Savior, the King, the one I never knew I was missing. He showed me everything. My life, my fears, my prayers, my obedience. But he didn't show them to shame me. He showed them to free me. He said, "I have always been here, waiting, loving, calling." I asked him why I had ended up in darkness if I had tried so hard to be good. He said, "Because goodness without truth is still blindness, and I am the truth." He reached out his hand, and I took it. And in that moment, I came alive. I woke up in the hospital, surrounded by machines and confused faces. My body was broken, but my soul was whole. Amir was there. My children. The first word that came from my lips was Jesus. The room fell silent. Amir's eyes filled with fear, then anger. He called the doctor, said I was hallucinating, but I wasn't. I was finally clear, finally awake, and I knew from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. I tried to explain everything. The dream, the fire, the voice, the face of Jesus. I thought maybe, just maybe, if Amir heard it from my lips, he would believe. But he didn't. His eyes filled with panic. He looked at me like I was possessed. He said I had been deceived, that Satan was trying to pull me away from the truth. But I had never felt more clarity in my life. I told him I wasn't rejecting God. I had met him. I had seen the one who loves, who saves, who restores. But my words landed like stones on cold ground. The man I had trusted all my life suddenly became my greatest threat. Within days, the whispers began. At the mosque, in the community, at the hospital. I was the woman who had lost her mind, the apostate, the traitor. Some women who used to embrace me now looked away. Others crossed the street to avoid me. At home, the silence turned into shouting. Amir demanded I renounce what I said, that I repent, that I promise never to speak of this again. I told him I couldn't lie. I had seen the truth. I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't unknow it. I had finally found peace, and I wouldn't give it up. Not for safety, not even for family. The hardest part wasn't the strangers. It was my children. My eldest son, Yusuf, was furious. He said I had shamed him, shamed our family, shamed our God. He quoted verses at me, his voice trembling. He said I was sick, that I needed help, but I could see the fear behind his words. My daughter, Noor, was different. She watched me quietly, her eyes searching mine. I could see the war inside her. She wanted to believe me, but everything in her life had told her not to. One night she came to my room and whispered, "Mama, did you really see him?" I held her hand and said, "Yes, baby, I did." Noor began asking more questions. Quietly, secretly. She wanted to know what Jesus said, what he looked like, how I knew it was him. I told her everything, not to convert her, not to convince her, but because truth can't be hidden. And she listened, not like a student, but like a seeker. She was scared of what her father would say, of what the world would think, but she was drawn to the peace she saw in me. I told her, Ask him yourself. He will answer you. That night, she didn't sleep in her room. She knelt beside me and prayed in a whisper. But peace didn't last. The threats escalated. One morning we woke to find the word apostate spray painted across our front door in red. That evening, a rock shattered our living room window. A note was tied to it. Leave or die. Amir blamed me. Said I had brought this curse on our house. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't comfort our crying children. He told me I had to stop speaking his name. That if I loved our family, I would protect them by staying silent. But how could I? I had seen eternity. I had seen the fire. I had seen the king. How could I deny him now? Amir grew more violent, not with fists, but with words, with silence, with control. He threatened to take the children, to tell the court I was insane, to erase me from their lives. He said I was forcing him into this, that I had chosen shame over honor. I cried. I begged, not for myself, but for our family, for our children. I wanted peace, but not at the price of my soul. I realized then that I couldn't stay, that staying would mean dying, slowly, silently, spiritually. I prayed that night, trembling. Jesus, what do I do? And his voice came, not loud, but steady. Go. Leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done. I waited for the night Amir would be away. I packed a small bag, just the essentials, some food, a photo of all my children. I kissed Yusuf's forehead while he slept. I looked Noor in the eyes and said, "Keep asking questions. He will answer you." I took my two youngest, Zaid and Miriam. They were still small, still open, still soft. I wrapped them in coats, held their hands, and walked out the back door into the freezing rain. We didn't run from fear. We walked toward truth. And I knew deep inside, Jesus was walking with us. We crossed the city in silence. We hid. We traveled by bus, by foot. Every step felt like a leap of faith. I didn't know where we'd go, but I knew who we were following. A friend from the online group had connected me to a Christian family in Ireland. They said they'd take us in. When we finally arrived, they greeted us with open arms. No judgment, no fear, just love. Their house was small, but warm. Their prayers were gentle, full of hope. That night I slept for the first time in weeks. And in the morning, we knelt together and said his name, Jesus. Life in Ireland wasn't easy. I had no job, no money, no family, no papers. But I had peace. I had truth. And I had hope. The children began school. I cleaned homes and offices to provide for us. And every night we prayed. Zaid began drawing pictures of Jesus. Miriam asked to hear stories from the Bible. They didn't understand it all, but they felt his presence. And I watched as their hearts opened. Free from fear, free from shame, free from the burden of performance. They laughed more, slept better, smiled without guilt. And I knew this was the beginning of something holy. I still pray every night for Yusuf and Noor. I see their faces in my dreams. I whisper their names into the silence. I believe Jesus will reach them, just like he reached me. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I trust him. He is the God who leaves the 99 to find the one. And I was that one. If he found me in fire, in fear, in false religion, then he can find them too. My heart longs for the day we'll be reunited, not just as a family, but as believers. Until then, I wait, I trust, I love, and I speak, because the truth is too beautiful to keep quiet. This story isn't just mine. It could be yours. Maybe you're where I was, bound by rules but far from peace, surrounded by religion, yet starving for truth. Maybe you've been afraid to question, afraid to hope, afraid to believe there might be something more. But let me tell you this, there is. His name is Jesus. He's not waiting for you to be perfect. He's not standing with a list of your failures. He's standing with open arms, just as he did for me. And if he could find me in the darkest place of my life, he can find you too. Right here, right now. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to fix yourself before you come to him. All you have to do is ask. Whisper his name. Ask him to show you the truth. Ask him to speak to your heart. He will. He always does. That's who he is. The God who speaks, who saves, who loves without condition. the God who sees you, the God who hears every silent cry. Don't wait until it's too late. Don't silence the questions. They're not rebellion. They're the beginning of revelation. If what I shared moved you, if something inside you is stirring, don't ignore it. That stirring is not emotion. It's an invitation. Jesus is calling you, right now. Not into religion, not into rituals, but into relationship, into freedom, into love. This is your moment, your step, your choice. Don't let fear hold you. Don't let shame bind you. You were made for more than silence. You were made for truth. Subscribe to this channel and follow Jesus. Not tradition, not fear, not the voice of guilt, but the voice of the shepherd who lays down his life for his sheep. Every video here is created to help you walk with him, know him, trust him, love him. This is more than content. This is a calling. If you're ready to leave the shadows behind and step into the light, this is your invitation. Take it. Share this testimony with someone who needs to hear it. Someone in your life might be where I was, smiling on the outside, drowning inside. You never know what your courage could spark in them. Speak up, be bold, be loving. Let your story speak, even if it trembles. If you've been touched by this message, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Tell me how I can pray for you. You're not alone. You're seen. You're deeply loved. Jesus is not just a chapter in a holy book. He's the living word. He's alive. He's here. And he's waiting. I pray you find him like I did. Not in fear, but in fire. Not in rules, but in love. Not in striving, but in surrender. If you feel something in your heart right now, that's him. Don't run. Don't wait. Just say his name, Jesus. That one word can change your life. It changed mine forever. Thank you for walking with me through my story. Thank you for letting my voice meet your heart. I don't take that lightly. Wherever you are on your journey, I want you to know that I'm praying for you, that there's a family here for you, that this space was made for truth seekers, for wanderers, for the broken and the brave. Stay close, stay open, keep asking, keep seeking, and above all, keep walking, because the one who made you is calling you home. Until next time, stay strong, stay real, and stay near to the truth.